I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. George has this little Foley Belsaw unit. It's a number 399. He wanted me to go through and fix it to make it work. Well, really, it's working now. What it does need, though, it needs to have the stone shaped. This chainsaw chain is a little small for what this grinder wants to deal with. Most of the grinding wheels that came with it are too wide to fit down in there. They do come fairly small, but the thinnest one that George has is about 1/8 of an inch. And that will just fit in there. So we're going to change out the stone that he's got in there right now and put in this smaller stone. This cover is held on with Phillips screws. The front one is slotted and the back one is looped, so you can just spin it back out of the way. I want to make sure that my stone is in good condition. I'm going to look at all the outside edges and make sure it's straight and square. Part of the reason I made the rack for the stones for George is so that the edges of these don't get all chipped up. If you throw them out of balance, they can shatter on you. So I'm going to look at the outside edges, make sure it's straight and square. Looks to be in good condition. I also want to make sure that the paper is on there and intact. Because if you don't have the paper on there, when you clamp it between these two washers, it'll develop a point load at any high part of the stone. Anywhere where there's a grit sticking up, it'll put pressure on that single point and crush it, and it might cause the stone to crack. Now in the book it says never to tighten this up with a wrench. Always tighten it up with your fingers. I imagine it's for the same reason. They don't want to have anything in there crushing on the grit in the stone, causing it to fracture. The other thing you want to do, though, is you want to make sure that you snug it up with your fingers. If you don't snug it up with your fingers when you first turn it on, either the spindle will spin inside of the wheel, which will cause the inside of the wheel to chew out, or it'll slam in and tighten up, and you'll need a wrench to get it off. That's over-tightening the bolt. Now the other thing you want to do is every time you change the wheel, you turn it on when you're standing back out of the way. And point the wheel at something that you don't really care about. If it does shatter, it's going to do it right when it starts up. Okay. Now with the grinder unplugged, I'm going to go in and check it against the blade. Now you probably already know this, so if I'm preaching to the choir, bear with me. These teeth have alternate bevels. This one goes left, that one goes right. You set your sharpener so that when you're running against the tooth of the chain, it matches the bevel of the chain. Now I see people leaving this loose. Myself, I like to tighten it. It only takes a second, and then you're up snug and you're going to be cutting the tooth the way you want it. Now these teeth are cut at 35 degrees. I don't know why they're set at 35 degrees. They can be anywhere they want to be. This could have been hand sharpened and somebody hand sharpened it badly. 35 degrees is about as sharp an angle as you're going to get. I'm thinking that when they made this chain, they made it for a tiny chainsaw that needed to have as light a load against it as it possibly could. So they made the chain cut very, very little at a time. There's two adjustments I'm going to be setting on the grinder. One is the stop. The back of the tooth rides against the stop and sets the distance that the grinder is going to sharpen the tooth to. I don't want to take off too much, and I want to have them all consistent. This little knob on the back sets the depth. If you turn it in, the wheel doesn't go as deep. If you back it out, it goes deeper. I don't want to have this tooth ground too far down into this. I don't want to cut away the link. I want to just touch that front right there, and I want to have it at a good enough angle that I'm just going to leave a little bit of a hook there. I don't want to have a whole lot of hook. That makes it too weak. And I don't want to have it be inclined backwards. So I need to have the grinding wheel come down through at just about that angle and dress the front of that tooth. If I crank this all the way in, you can see that it makes the grinding wheel not even touch the chain. I want to back that out so that the grinding wheel is going down and touching the tooth, but not hitting the link. I can take it down until it touches the front of the tooth like I want it, and then just pick it up slightly. That's going to give me the proper angle and a pretty good depth. Now we can turn on the grinder and give it a start. We're better off not trying to take a whole big cut all at once. There's a little bit of slop in the grinder because it's a little old. So if I tend to pull down the same way, it's going to crack pretty much the same. If I push it one time or pull it the next, I'm not going to get a consistent grind. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch the teeth. I'm going to go around and I'm going to set all the teeth to the same length. Now that I've touched this one, I'm going to mark it with a black magic marker. Just take my little Sharpie and mark the top of the tooth. That way I'll know that's where I started and that's where I want to stop. Okay, we can turn the grinder on and get going. Just pull it around until the next tooth with the proper bevel comes around, and then pull it back against it, lock it down. Now we can see that one's way too short. I don't want to take it a whole lot more. That one we might have to leave set for a while. Sharpening all the teeth down to meet the shortest one works, but it's really hard on the chain life. Okay, that's a skip right there. That must be where the master link was. Now I come around to this one, pull it down, lock it. Just barely touching on that one. It's the alternate tooth. Now we come up against this one, lock it down. Not hitting at all. I'll bet that first one we picked was the longest tooth of the whole bunch. We're going to have to take down the rakers quite a bit when we do this one. Now that we've actually sharpened a tooth, let's shut it off, take a look at it. We can always come back and put it back there again. Wait till the wheel stops before I pull the chain out. I don't want to hit the chain against the wheel. That's the tooth that we first touched, and we just barely hit it. I've dressed the tooth all the way across. We don't have much of a hook on there. I think I need to go just a little bit deeper. I need to go down deeper with that tooth. So I'm going to have to set the grindstone to go further into it. Can't go a whole lot, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, but that's going to make a difference in where that hook ends up. Right now this is almost vertical. We don't want any vertical surfaces, or even, especially not a back angle. That's a 1/4 screw. Each turn is 50 thousandths. So if I go half a turn, that's 25 thousandths. Let the wheel coast down. And I only need to do that when I'm taking the chain out. Now that's a proper hook in there. But I can also see that the depth gauge is going to be taller than the tooth. So we're going to have to take that depth gauge down quite a bit. Marked that tooth is my starter. So I'm going to go around here to the next tooth. Turn the grinder back on. We're going to do 2 more teeth looking at them. I'm going to sharpen this one, take it back out and look at it. Now, part of the reason I'm having to go down so far to get that hook is this tooth got shorter. A lot shorter. That means it went back this way and down. But that's good right there. Yeah, we're not into the rivet, we're not into the link below it, but I think this chain is just about gone. Not much left after this sharpening. It's too bad too, because somebody filed the hell out of one side and didn't touch the other side very much at all. You can see that this tooth, it's got a lot of material left in it compared to that one. These are much shorter. Now we need to set this to cut the other direction. I was having some trouble getting the mark to stay on there. The black just disappeared into the chain. So I decided to use this white waterproof marking stick. It washes off, but not very easily. Marks light on dark surfaces, dries within 5 minutes. But it does make it so I can see the darn thing. There, now we got a good sharp tooth. Had a hook in there, just about right. We're not cutting down into the rivet. Now we should be able to just zip right along and get these done. Now we're doing this a little awkwardly because I wanted to be able to show you what I was doing. If I set this on top of 2 teeth, the depth gauge should be just below it. If I set the rule so it rests on top of the teeth, it should be slightly above what the depth stop is. And this one back here is actually sitting on top of the depth stop. Now to set the depth stop, you want to have the depth stop as far below this as the thickness of the tooth. So that this lines up with the bottom of that. This depth stop lines up with the bottom of that tooth. By moving the stop back far enough. There. Learn something new every day. Okay, now that's going to work, but I don't want to use this wheel. This wheel is set to grind teeth. Make sure I have that turned off and the cord unplugged. And then pull this wheel out of there. Now because I know now that this wheel is set up to cut this small chain, I'm going to give George a chance and mark that wheel so that he'll be able to find it. Now this wheel is wider. And I'm going to bevel it so that it hits on this side. because I really want to make that depth stop almost. This wheel that I'm going to mount on there is wider, and it's also beveled. I'm going to set this up so it cuts the depth stop almost straight up and down. Take that up snug. This wheel's a lot bigger around. So I set the wheel on top of the depth stop and then crank it back up. Yeah, that's exactly the height of that depth stop. Now I want to take it down the thickness of the blade. I'm measuring the thickness of the tooth. 38 thousandths thick. So I want my depth stop 38 thousandths below the surface of that tooth. Set that down so it's touching. And bring it in until it just starts to move. So I set that down on the tooth. Until it's touching. Then bring this in until it just starts to move off the tooth. Right there. Now because this is a 1/4 20 thread, I know that each turn of that is 50 thousandths. So if I put a mark on that knob, if I take it half a turn, that's 25. If I take it 3/4 of a turn, that's 37.5 thousandths. So I think we're pretty close. So what we do now, we lock everything down, plug the grinder back in, put on my face shield, and start the grinder. That's telling me that that depth stop is right where it's supposed to be. Now because I don't have to change bevel angles, all I have to do is touch the depth stop. I don't have to flip the grinder back and forth. All I have to do is lock it down and touch the tooth. That's just barely marking the tip of that tooth. There, now we've gone all the way around. So we've sharpened this chainsaw chain. And the only way to know if it really works is to put it on the chainsaw, which I don't have. So I'm going to leave this one up for George. I think I'll just coil it up, put it in a bag, and let him have it back. Okay, George, I think we got your grinder all set up. It should be working just fine. I'm going to make a copy of the book. The book that you gave me is pretty rough shape. So I'm going to go ahead and scan it into the computer and make a copy of it and print out a new set. It's really handy having that $3.99 booklet, and I might see another one of these. If I see one, I think I'm going to pick it up. This is a nice little sharpener. George has got himself a good machine. According to YouTube, 95% of you guys come back multiple times. Must be we're doing it right. But only 15% of you are subscribers. Why not click on the subscribe button? That'll get you hooked up to the channel so that every time I put up a video, every day at noon, you'll get a notification and you won't miss any. Be glad to see you back again tomorrow. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.